In this video, you're going to see a 40-minute drawing done from life by me, Lacey Swift, of my model, Amanda. If you have seen the video of my flexible charcoal drawing method, you'll know that in that method, I recommend that you get a block in, and then fill in your dark half, and then fill in your shadow half with dark charcoal, and the light half with white charcoal. But what if you would rather have the paper be some of the value of your drawing? In this video, I am going to share with you a situation where I used the paper as a middle value in my drawing and how to think about that and determine which values will in fact be that gray paper. So first of all, I want to note that I'm not doing a full block in this drawing because I only have 40 minutes. And when I'm going to do the full procedure of creating a straight line block in and then dividing the light and shadow shapes, I want to have at least 2 hours. 40 minutes, as it turns out, is not actually that long in order to create a drawing. So I'm still using light lines here and keeping a lot of them relatively straight, but I am getting into more detail than I would if I had a longer pose. After I get everything blocked in, I'm going to start outlining some shadow shapes, committing to some more firm contours and giving them a variety of edge hardnesses, and I'm going to start shading in the darkest darks. But let's talk for a minute about how I knew where to place shading and where to place the white and where to leave the blank paper. So if you look at the drawing over on the right-hand side, you're going to notice that there are actually 2 light sources. There's one light source coming all the way from the left, and you can see where there is a bright white light on the figure from that light source. But there's actually a second light source, which is hitting even more of the figure. There's a light source coming from the upper right-hand side, and it is filling in that shadow. It's less intense than the light coming from the left, but it's still a light. I find it's really important when you have 2 light sources that you identify them as separate and you choose one to be the dominant light source and tone down the other. You can think about it just being a darker source of light, or you can think about it being a reflected light. But if you treat them both equally, the whole thing's going to look flat. So in this instance, I decided to use white to depict anywhere that the light from the left-hand side was hitting. So literally everywhere that that light hits the figure, there is at least a little bit of white on the paper. Intense highlights will have more white, and the halftones from that light source just have a little bit of light with some of the paper showing through. On the other half, anything that has the secondary light or the light from our right-hand side hitting it is going to have a little bit of the paper showing through. So the lightest light on that side is now represented by the value of the paper. I do want you to keep in mind, though, that that's partially because of the actual value of the paper. If I had a darker paper, the paper would need to represent a darker value. And if I had a lighter paper, like white paper, I might not be able to use that white paper as that light value on that shadow side. I might need to shade it in. So that's also a consideration, is that this is kind of a middle value paper. So you'll notice on the left-hand side now that I have started to shade on the drawing. I've shaded in those darkest darks, which are just areas where neither light source is hitting very much. So they're mostly on downward facing planes, where that arm is facing downwards and where the legs are facing downwards. Next, I'm going to establish the separation in the lights. So I'm going to separate that strong light coming from the left by adding a bunch of white. As I'm adding the white onto the left-hand side of the figure, I am trying to think about where the light is hitting more strongly. So I'm not making it all totally even to begin with, and a lot of that is because I need to get as much done in one layer as possible, since this is just a 40-minute drawing. I'm creating different thicknesses there as well, because if I left things as just a line, it's going to look a little bit flat. So those shapes with the white need to have a variety of shapes, a variety of thicknesses, and a bunch of different values. So more intense white in some of the values and less intense white in other values. Once I have that pretty well established, it's time to go back to shading on the other side. I've already established my main shadows, but now I need to look for the core shadow that is near the white that I just put in, and also shadows or halftones that are occurring because the form is wrapping away from us. Those shadows that are occurring because the form is going away from us can be seen on the top side of the arm, on the top of the shoulder, and on the top of the thigh. Shading can also show indentations in the form that are more gentle, like the ones where the ribs are separated. Where I see people go wrong a lot of the time here is that they'll want to fill in that gray area of the paper with more white, especially because definitely when I was looking at the live model, I could see that there was actually light hitting those areas that I have currently left blank in the drawing. It's really difficult to not add white on places where light is hitting, especially because when we look, it may seem really bright. It takes really focusing on the method and being very purposeful of understanding what is going to represent which light source in order to make this work. At this point, the roundness is pretty well established, so it's just a matter of some final plane changes and giving some emphasis to a couple parts to make them more interesting. If you have found this video useful, please give it a like. If you would like full in-depth tutorials on figure drawing and tons of reference photos, check out patreon.com/School of Realist Art. And if you're looking for an entire figure drawing course, check out figuredrawingacademy.com. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.